I never forgot the sound of those words. She is deaf and mute. We can't raise a girl who doesn't talk. My daughter-in-law, Carol, said it with such coldness that I felt my blood run cold. We were in the hallway of the maternity ward in Boston. She had given birth barely 6 hours earlier, and she had already made the decision. My son, Scott, stood beside her, his eyes on the floor, unable to look at me. In the arms of a social worker, wrapped in a pale pink blanket, was my granddaughter. My first granddaughter. The baby I had waited for with such excitement for 9 months. And they were taking her away from me. We gave her up for adoption, Carol continued, wiping away tears that didn't look sincere. There's nothing you can do, Georgia. We already signed the papers. It's best for everyone. I tried to move closer, to reach out my arms to that defenseless creature, but the social worker took a step back. I'm sorry, Mom, she said, in a professional, distant voice. The biological parents have relinquished their rights. The process is already underway. I watched them take her down that long, white corridor, watched them disappear behind the double doors of the elevator. And something broke inside me. Something that would never be the same again. Let me go back in time a little. 6 months before that horrible day, I was a different woman. I was 61 years old. I had been a widow for 3 years, and my whole life revolved around my only son, Scott, and his wife, Carol. When they announced they were expecting a baby, I cried with happiness. I was going to be a grandmother. After years of loneliness following my husband's death, I would finally have something beautiful to live for. I started knitting baby clothes, bought toys, and prepared a room in my house for when they brought her to visit. Carol let me touch her belly. She showed me the ultrasounds. We planned names together. We were almost friends. Almost. Everything changed in the 5th month of the pregnancy. Carol arrived from a doctor's appointment with her face distraught. Scott drove in silence. I invited them into my house, made them some iced tea, and asked them what had happened. The doctor detected something, Carol said, her voice trembling. The baby has a severe hearing problem. She will be born deaf. I felt a flip in my stomach, not from horror, but from maternal concern. Well, I said, taking her hand, there are many resources now. Therapies, cochlear implants, sign language. We can… No, Carol interrupted, abruptly pulling her hand away. I am not going to raise a defective child. I am not going to dedicate my life to something like that. I froze. Something like that? You're talking about your daughter. I'm talking about my future, she replied, standing up. Scott and I have discussed it. We're giving her up for adoption as soon as she's born. There are specialized families who handle these cases. I looked at my son, expecting him to say something, to defend his own daughter, but he just nodded. It's the most responsible thing, Mum. We're not prepared for this. Prepared? I nearly shouted. No parent is prepared, but you learn, you fight, you love unconditionally. You don't understand, Carol said dismissively. You're from another generation. Things will be different. We want a normal, perfect family, not a charity project. Those words haunted me for the next 4 months. I tried to talk to them dozens of times. I brought them information about successful deaf children, about happy families, about all the support I could give them. I offered to pay for the therapies, to learn sign language, to care for the baby myself if necessary. But each time, they rejected me more harshly. Carol stopped answering my calls. Scott asked me not to come to their house, and I, God forgive me, kept insisting, because inside that belly was my granddaughter, my blood, my son's child, and I couldn't just abandon her. The day of the delivery, no one told me. I found out from a neighbor who saw Scott rushing out with suitcases. I drove to the hospital like a maniac, took the stairs because the elevator was too slow, searched every floor until I found the room. When I walked in, Carol was sitting on the bed, wearing makeup, hair done, as if she had just returned from a spa and not given birth. Scott was signing papers next to a woman in a grey suit. "What are you doing?" I asked breathlessly. "What we should have done from the start," Carol replied without looking at me. "Freeing ourselves from this burden." "She's not a burden, she's a baby. She's your daughter." "She was my daughter," she corrected me. "Now she's someone else's problem." That's when I saw her. The social worker walked in with her in her arms. She was perfect, tiny, with a head of dark hair, pink lips, and clenched fists. She slept peacefully, oblivious to the horror unfolding around her. I approached slowly, my heart shattered. "Can I hold her?" I pleaded. "Just for a moment. Please." The social worker looked at Carol, who shook her head. "There's no point in getting attached, Ma'am. This is already decided." And that's when I said the words that would change everything. "I'll raise her. Give me my granddaughter. I'll take care of everything." The silence that followed was deafening. Carol looked at me with pure hatred. Scott stopped writing. The social worker waited. "Absolutely not," Carol finally said. "I'm not going to let you turn this into a circus. The child is going to a real family, prepared, trained, not to a 60-year-old woman who doesn't know anything." "I know more than you think," I replied firmly, "and I love her more than you ever could. Love doesn't pay for therapy, love doesn't bring back her hearing, but love gives her dignity, something you are denying her." Carol got up from the bed with difficulty, walked toward me, and looked me straight in the eyes. "Listen to me closely, Georgia. This child is not your problem. She is not your second chance. She is not your redemption project. We already signed. We already decided. And if you try to do anything, if you try to block this adoption, I swear you will never see Scott again. Do you understand? You lose your granddaughter, and you lose your son." I looked at Scott, searching for a sign, a word, anything that would tell me he disagreed. But he just looked away. My own son, the boy I had raised alone after his father died, the child I had given everything to, and he was choosing her over his own daughter, over me. Then what I told you at the beginning happened. The social worker took the baby away. I stood paralyzed in that hallway, and when the elevator doors closed, I knew I had reached a crossroads. I could give up, accept that I had lost, go back to my empty house and pretend nothing had happened. Or I could fight. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room surrounded by all the baby clothes I had bought, the toys, the books, and I made a decision. I was not going to give up. I was not going to let my granddaughter grow up thinking no one wanted her. I was not going to allow Carol and Scott to erase her existence as if she were a mistake. I was going to find her. It didn't matter how long it took me. It didn't matter what I had to learn. It didn't matter if I had to search every corner of the country. I was going to find my granddaughter. And when I did, she would know she had a grandmother who never gave up. The next morning, I went back to Scott and Carol's house in Queens, New York. I knocked on the door with determination. My son opened it, still in his pajamas, with dark circles under his eyes. "Mum, it's not a good time. I need information," I said, pushing the door open. "I need to know which agency they gave the baby to, which family adopted her, where she is." Carol appeared behind him, wearing a mint green robe. She looked rested, as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. "Are you still on about this? I thought you understood." I'm never going to understand how you could abandon your own daughter. I didn't abandon her, she replied coldly. I placed her in a better situation, with qualified people. People who aren't going to die in 10 years and leave her orphaned. Those words hurt me more than I wanted to admit. I'm 61, not 80, and I'm perfectly healthy. You're old, Georgia. Too old to raise a child with special needs. Accept it and leave us alone. Scott put a hand on my shoulder. Mum, please, it's enough. The baby is better off without us. Without you? Maybe. Without me? Never. Carol let out a bitter laugh. You look so heroic, but the reality is that you have no legal rights. We are the parents. We decide. And we decided that this child is not part of this family. Then neither am I said, taking a step back. If that baby is not part of this family, neither am I. Scott turned pale. Mum, don't say that. Why not? It's the truth. You chose. You chose comfort, perfection, image, and I choose her. That baby you didn't even know. My granddaughter. Carol crossed her arms. Fine. Leave then. But don't come back crying when you realize this is a waste of time. The adoption is closed, confidential. You'll never find her. You'll never know where she is. And even if you do find her, what are you going to do? Show up as the crazy grandmother who didn't accept the parents' decision? I'm going to show up as the only person who loved her from the beginning, I replied firmly. And I'm going to make sure she knows that there was someone who fought for her. Scott shook his head. You're making a mistake, Mum. The only mistake I made was raising you to be such a coward. I saw my son break, saw tears start to form in his eyes. But Carol pulled him inside. Let her go. She'll be back begging for forgiveness in a week, you'll see. The door closed in my face. And I stood there, on that porch where I had spent so many happy afternoons, where I had celebrated birthdays and Christmases, where I had believed I had a family, but not anymore. I had nothing left, except a promise I had made to myself. The first few days were chaotic. I had no idea where to start. I called the adoption agency that Carol had mentioned once, but they hung up as soon as I said my name. Apparently, she had warned them about me. I went to social services, but they told me that closed adoptions were exactly that. Closed. No information, no accessible records, no way to track. I'm sorry, Mum, a social worker told me with genuine compassion. I understand your pain, but the biological parents relinquished their rights. And you, as the grandmother, legally have none. Not even to know if she's okay, if she's alive. Not even that. I left that office feeling completely powerless, but the powerlessness quickly turned to fury, and the fury turned into determination. I sold the jewelry my husband had given me. A pearl necklace, gold earrings, my engagement ring. It hurt to part with them, but I needed money. I took out all my savings, almost $8,000 that I had kept for emergencies. This was an emergency, the biggest emergency of my life. I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus, a man in his 50s who looked like he had seen too much. I told him the whole story. He listened in silence, taking notes. Mrs. Georgia, he finally said, I'm going to be honest with you. This is almost impossible. Closed adoptions are designed precisely to prevent this. But almost impossible is not impossible. How long? I asked. How much money? Time, I don't know. It could be months. It could be years. Money, my fee is $200 per week plus expenses. I did the mental math. My savings would be gone in less than 2 months. I need to get a job, I murmured. I need more money. And that's what I did. At 61, after being retired for 3 years, I went back to work. I got a job at a fabric store, Monday through Saturday, 8 hours a day. The salary wasn't much, but every penny went straight to Marcus. Every penny was one step closer to her. Marcus worked for 6 straight months. He investigated hospitals, agencies, families who had recently adopted. He bribed secretaries, reviewed leaked documents, and followed every minimal lead. But we always hit dead ends. The bureaucracy is airtight, he explained, frustrated. Someone is protecting that information very well. Scott and Carol, of course. They had made sure I could never find her. 8 months after the birth, Marcus finally gave up. I'm sorry, Georgia. I've exhausted all my contacts. I can't keep taking your money without results. I had spent more than $5,000, and I had nothing, absolutely nothing. That night I cried as I hadn't cried since my husband's death. I cried for my lost granddaughter, for my son who had betrayed me, for the wasted months, for the helplessness. But when the tears ran out, I got up, washed my face, looked in the mirror, and realized something. I had been looking in the wrong places. I had been relying on other people. I had been waiting for someone else to do the work. But this was my fight, my search, my granddaughter. And I had to change my strategy. I started researching the deaf community. If my granddaughter was deaf, she would eventually need specialized services, schools, therapy, interpreters. And those services leave tracks. I started visiting audiology clinics, asking about recently diagnosed babies. I attended support groups for parents of deaf children, listening to stories, looking for coincidences. And it was in one of those groups that I heard something that changed everything. A mother mentioned American Sign Language, how her 3-year-old daughter could already communicate perfectly, how it had transformed their lives. How beautiful it was to see her child express herself. And I thought, if I ever find my granddaughter, how am I going to communicate with her? How am I going to tell her I looked for her? How am I going to tell her I love her? I can't. Not with words she can't hear. I need her language. The following week, I enrolled in my first American Sign Language class. I was the oldest student by 20 years. My hands were stiff. My memory wasn't what it used to be. It was hard for me to remember the signs. The young people learned in weeks what took me months. But I didn't give up. I practiced in front of the mirror every night. I watched videos online until my eyes hurt. I took sign flashcards to my job and reviewed them during breaks. My instructor, a deaf woman named Naomi, was incredibly patient with me. She corrected me again and again, without frustration, with tenderness. One day after class, I told her my story. I told her about my granddaughter, about the search, about my promise. Naomi looked at me with tears in her eyes and made a sign I will never forget. Warrior. I was a warrior, and warriors don't give up. A year passed, then 2. Scott and Carol had another baby, a boy, perfectly healthy, perfectly hearing. I found out on social media, where Carol constantly posted pictures of her perfect family. They never mentioned the baby they had abandoned. It was as if she had never existed. But I didn't forget. Not a single day. Every night before going to sleep, I thought of her. How old would she be now? What would she look like? Would she be happy? Would they treat her well? Would she know I existed? And every morning I woke up with the same determination. Today could be the day. Today I could find her. By the 3rd year of searching, my life had completely transformed. I was no longer the same 61-year-old Georgia who cried in hospital hallways. I was now 64, worked 40 hours a week, studied advanced American Sign Language at night, and dedicated every weekend to visiting institutions, schools, and centers for deaf children. My house was full of maps, marked with places I had already visited, with notes stuck on the walls, with blurry photographs of little girls I had seen from afar who could be her. My obsession had consumed me completely, but I didn't care, because every step, every sign learned, every institution visited, was one step closer to my granddaughter. Naomi, my sign language instructor, had become my best friend. She understood my determination in a way no one else could. "The deaf community is small," she told me one day while we were practicing in her living room. "If your granddaughter is receiving the right services, eventually someone will know her. You just need to keep connecting." And that's what I did. I volunteered at 3 different schools for deaf children. I helped at events, fundraisers, and festivals. I met hundreds of families. I saw hundreds of little girls. Some were the right age. Some had features that reminded me of my husband, of Scott, of myself. But I was never sure. I could never get close enough. I could never ask without raising suspicion. The toll was beginning to show. I had lost almost 20 pounds. I had grey hair that hadn't been there before. My hands, from practicing signs so much, sometimes trembled with fatigue. My co-workers told me I looked sick, that I needed rest, but rest meant giving up. And giving up was not an option. One night, after a particularly exhausting day, I received a call from Scott. It was the first time we had spoken in almost 2 years. "Mum," his voice sounded strained, "we need to talk." "I have nothing to talk to you about," I replied coldly. "It's about your health. Carol saw that you're working like crazy, that you look terrible. We're worried." "Now you're worried? After 3 years?" "Mum, please, this has to end. That girl already has a family. She already has a life. You're destroying yours for a fantasy." "It's not a fantasy. She's my granddaughter." "She was your granddaughter. Legally. She no longer exists for us." I felt rage rise in my throat. "For you, maybe. For me, she exists every second of every day." "Mum, I beg you. Drop this. Go back to living. We forgive you. You can meet your grandson, Robert. You can be a part of his life." "Forgive me," I almost screamed. "For what? For loving unconditionally? For not abandoning an innocent baby? For choosing her over you? You chose first, Scott. You chose selfishness, cowardice, cruelty. I only chose love." I hung up the phone and cried until I ran out of air. Because a part of me, a small, tired part, wanted to accept his offer. I wanted to have a family again. I wanted to hold my grandson, celebrate birthdays, feel part of something. But every time that temptation appeared, I thought of her, my lost granddaughter. Her eyes I never saw, her hands I never held. And I knew I couldn't betray her, not after everything I had promised. In the 4th year, I finally achieved something that seemed impossible. I became fluent in American Sign Language. Naomi confirmed it with tears of pride. "You are extraordinary, Georgia. At your age, with your dedication, you have reached a level that few hearing people achieve." The deaf community accepted me as one of their own. They invited me to dinners, gatherings, and celebrations. And I went to all of them, always searching, always asking subtly, always waiting for that moment when someone would mention an adopted child, a new family, something that would give me a clue. But the months kept passing without concrete results. It was at a deaf community festival, one Saturday in October, when everything started to change. I had gone as a volunteer, helping organize the food tables. The place was full of families, children running, conversations in sign language everywhere. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time, because in every 4-year-old girl, I saw my granddaughter. I wondered if she was in a place like this, if she was happy, if her adoptive parents truly loved her. I was serving lemonade when I saw a man approach. He was about 45, tall, with a grey beard, and he communicated perfectly in sign language. He signed to me asking if there was any orange juice left. I replied in sign language that there was, that I would bring him one. His eyes lit up with surprise. "Are you hearing?" he asked me in sign language. "Yes," I replied the same way, "but I'm learning. I've been studying for 4 years." "Your level is impressive. Do you have a deaf family?" I hesitated for a moment. Then I decided to be honest. "I have a granddaughter who is deaf, but I haven't seen her since she was born. I'm looking for her." The man, who introduced himself as Victor, looked at me with deep curiosity. He signed for us to sit down. And there, at a table away from the bustle, I told him my story. Not the condensed version. I told him everything. The abandonment, the search, the lost years, the obsession, the pain, the hope that refused to die. Victor listened in silence, his eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, I saw that he had tears. "You are incredible," he told me. "I've met many parents and grandparents of deaf children. Some learn the basics out of obligation. Few truly commit. But you have given your entire life to a girl you don't even know." "She's my granddaughter," I replied simply. "Blood doesn't need to meet to love." Victor nodded slowly. "I'm a professional sign language interpreter. I work with agencies, schools, and hospitals. I have access to networks, information, and contacts that maybe you don't have." My heart started beating faster. "Are you telling me what?" "I'm telling you that I'm going to help you. I don't promise results, but I'm going to try." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After 4 years of closed doors, dead ends, and unsuccessful searches, someone with real resources was finally offering me help. "Why?" I asked him. "Why would you do this for me?" Victor looked out at the festival, at the children playing, at the families laughing. "Because I was adopted too," he replied in slow, deliberate signs. "And I spent my childhood wondering if someone had looked for me, if someone had cried for me, if someone had loved me before they abandoned me. I never got that answer. But your granddaughter, if we find her, is going to have hers. And she's going to know that, yes, someone loved her. Someone never gave up." That conversation gave me a hope I hadn't felt in years. Victor was meticulous and professional. He asked me for every detail I could remember: the exact date of birth, the hospital, the name of the adoption agency, anything that could help. "Adoptions of children with disabilities usually go to specific families," he explained. "Families who already have experience, who are prepared, who have resources. That group is smaller, more traceable." For the next few weeks, Victor investigated discreetly. He used his contacts in specialized schools, audiology clinics, and support groups. And then, 3 months after our first meeting, he called me. "Georgia, I think I have something." My world stopped. "What did you find?" "There's a family in Pasadena, California, 2 hours from here. They adopted a deaf girl 4.5 years ago, around the dates you gave me. The girl's name is Lily. She attends the Hope School for the Deaf." Lily. My granddaughter had a name. Lily. "Are you sure?" My voice was trembling. "Completely sure." 90% sure. The timing matches, the city is close, the family has the right profile. But Georgia, you need to understand something. You can't just show up and claim her. Those parents have raised her for 4 years. Legally, she is their daughter. I knew, I replied, tears streaming down my cheeks. I just need to see her. I just need to know she's okay, that she's happy, that someone loves her like I never could. Victor paused for a long time. I'll take you, but we have to be extremely careful. If the parents feel threatened, they can disappear. They can move, and you'll lose her forever. I spent that night without sleeping, staring at the ceiling, imagining what it would be like to see her. Would she look like Scott? Like me? Like my deceased husband? Would she have his smile? His eyes? How would I react when I finally saw her after 4.5 years of relentless searching? The next day, Victor and I drove to Pasadena. The trip was eternal and too short at the same time. Every mile brought me closer to her, but also increased my terror. What if it wasn't her? What if after all this, I was wrong? We arrived at the Hope School halfway through the morning. It was a pale yellow building with murals painted on the walls and children playing in the yard. Victor spoke with the director, explaining that we were volunteers interested in learning about the school. They gave us a tour. And then I saw her. She was in the yard, sitting on a swing, gently swaying. She was 4.5 years old. She wore a yellow dress with little white flowers. Her dark hair was tied up in 2 pigtails. And on her neck, just below her left ear, she had a birthmark. The same birthmark my husband had in the same place. The same one Scott inherited. The same one I had seen in the 20-week ultrasound when Carol let me accompany her to the doctor. It was her, my granddaughter, Lily. My legs almost gave out. Victor held my arm, feeling my whole body tremble. It's her, he whispered. I couldn't speak. I just nodded as tears began to fall uncontrollably. 4.5 years, 1,600 days of searching for her. And there she was, less than 20 yards away, alive, real, beautiful. A teacher approached Lily and signed to her. The girl nodded, got off the swing, and walked toward the building. She moved with confidence, with joy. She didn't look sad. She didn't look abandoned. She looked like a normal, happy, loved child. And that broke my heart in a different way, because it meant that maybe I was too late. Maybe she didn't need me anymore. Georgia, Victor gently touched my shoulder. We need to go. We can't raise suspicion. I can't, I whispered. I can't leave now that I've found her. I'm not telling you to leave forever. I'm telling you we need a plan. This has to be done right. He was right. I knew it. But every fiber of my being wanted to run to her, hug her, tell her who I was, tell her how much I had looked for her, how much I loved her. Instead, I let Victor guide me back to the car. We drove in silence for 20 minutes until I could finally speak. What do I do now? First, we need to confirm it's her. We need to know who the adoptive parents are. We need to understand their situation. How long will that take? Days, maybe weeks. But Georgia, listen to me closely. Once we have that information, you'll have to make a very difficult decision. What decision? Victor looked at me seriously. If that child is being well cared for, if she's happy, if she has parents who love her, you'll have to decide if it's worth interrupting her life. You'll have to decide if your need to be in her life is more important than her stability. His words hurt like daggers. I don't want to hurt her. I just want her to know I existed, that I looked for her. I know, but that truth could confuse her. It could make her feel abandoned twice. I never abandoned her, I said firmly. I never abandoned her. For the next week, Victor investigated discreetly. He discovered that the adoptive parents were named Joe and Eliza. Joe was a special education teacher. Eliza was a nurse. They had adopted Lily when she was 6 weeks old. They had been working with deaf children for years before deciding to adopt. They were, in every possible way, exemplary parents. "They're good people, Georgia," Victor told me, showing me the information he had collected. "Lily has therapy. She goes to an excellent school. She has friends. She's developing perfectly." "I'm glad," I said honestly. "I'm glad she's well cared for. But you still want to meet her?" "More than anything in the world." Victor sighed. "Then we have to be strategic. You need to integrate into her life in a way that doesn't raise alarms. You need Joe and Eliza to trust you before you reveal who you really are." I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. Victor arranged for me to volunteer at the Hope School. My sign language experience and my previous work with the deaf community gave me credibility. The director accepted me with enthusiasm. "We always need more volunteers," she told me, "especially someone with your level of commitment." I started going 3 times a week. I helped in the classes, in the cafeteria, and in the yard during recess. And I watched Lily from a distance. I saw her playing with her friends, communicating in sign language with impressive fluency for her age, laughing, learning, living. Every time I saw her, my heart expanded and broke at the same time. Because she was perfect. Absolutely perfect. And she didn't know me at all. 3 weeks passed before I finally interacted directly with her. It was during recess. Lily was alone in a corner, drawing with chalk on the ground. I approached slowly and sat down nearby. She looked at me with curiosity. I signed hello. Her eyes lit up. She signed the greeting back to me. "What are you drawing?" I asked her in sign language. "A house," she replied, "with a big yard and a dog." "It's beautiful. You like dogs?" She nodded enthusiastically. "I have one. His name is Cloud. He's big and white and sleeps in my bed." I listened to her talk about her dog, about her house, about her parents who took her to the park every Sunday. She spoke with such joy, with such confidence. This was a loved child, a child who had never felt abandoned. And I didn't know if that made me happy or crushed me. "What's your name?" she asked me. "Georgia," I replied. "And yours?" "Lily. But my parents call me Lily." "Lily." My granddaughter had a nickname her adoptive parents had given her with affection. "That's a beautiful name," I said, holding back tears. "You're beautiful too, Lily." She smiled. That smile reminded me so much of my husband that I almost couldn't breathe. Then she went back to her drawings, and I stayed sitting there, watching her, memorizing every detail of her face, her hands, her gestures. This was the moment I had waited for 4.5 years, and it was more painful and more beautiful than I ever imagined. When recess ended, Lily said goodbye to me with a spontaneous hug. She wrapped her little arms around my waist and squeezed tightly. I closed my eyes and tried to engrave that moment in my memory forever. My first hug from my granddaughter, my first physical contact with her. When she ran off to her class, I stood paralyzed in that yard. Victor appeared by my side. He had been watching from afar. "Are you okay?" he asked me. "I don't know," I admitted. "Seeing her, talking to her, is everything I dreamed of. But it also makes me realize how much I lost, how much Scott and Carol stole from me." "You didn't lose everything," Victor said. "You can still be a part of her life. You just have to find the right way." That night, in my empty house, I sat surrounded by all the notes and photographs I had accumulated over the years. And I made a decision. I was not going to violently disrupt Lily's life. I was not going to cause her confusion or pain. But I wasn't going to disappear either. I was going to earn a place in her life. Slowly, patiently, with love, I was going to be the volunteer who was always there, the older woman who taught her new things, the friend she could trust. And one day, when the time was right, I would tell her the truth. I would tell her I was her grandmother, that I had searched for her relentlessly, that not once, not a single day had I forgotten her. But for now, just being close was enough. For now, seeing her happy was all I needed. The following months were the most intense and contradictory of my life. Every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, I went to the Hope School as a volunteer, and every one of those days, I spent time with Lily. At first, it was just brief moments during recess. Then I started helping in her class. The teacher, seeing my fluency in sign language, asked me to assist with lessons, to work individually with children who needed more support. And Lily always asked to work with me. "I want Georgia to help me," she would sign to her teacher, and my heart melted every time. She told me things about her life with a trust that astonished me. She talked about her parents, Joe and Eliza, with a love so pure that it made me cry when I got home. "My dad carries me on his shoulders when we go to the farmer's market," she told me one day, "and my mom lets me help her bake cookies every Sunday." "That sounds wonderful," I replied. "You're happy with them?" Lily nodded with such certainty that there was no room for doubt. "They are the best parents in the world. They tell me they chose me specially, that they looked for me because they wanted a daughter exactly like me." Those words broke and healed me at the same time. They broke me because they confirmed that I had arrived too late, that Lily already had a complete, loving, stable family. But they also healed me because it meant that my granddaughter had never suffered. She had never felt abandoned. She had never known rejection. Carol and Scott had discarded her, but Joe and Eliza had picked her up with infinite love. One Saturday, after 3 months of constant volunteering, I finally met Joe and Eliza in person. They arrived early to pick up Lily because they had a doctor's appointment. When they walked into the classroom, Lily ran toward them with open arms. Joe picked her up and spun her around while she laughed. Eliza fixed her hair with maternal tenderness. And then Lily pointed to me. "Mum, Dad, this is Georgia. She's my friend." Joe and Eliza approached with kind smiles. They were exactly as Victor had described them. Joe had a warm presence, kind eyes. Eliza radiated sweetness. "Nice to meet you," Joe said in perfect sign language. "Lily talks about you a lot at home." "Really, I asked, feeling my throat tighten. "All the time," Eliza added, also in sign language. "She says you're teaching her new words, that you tell her stories, that you're very kind to her." I had to make a superhuman effort not to burst into tears right there. "Lily is an extraordinary child," I managed to say. "It's a privilege to spend time with her." "We're glad she has positive adults in her life," Joe said, "especially someone as committed to the deaf community as you are." They asked me about my history, about how I had learned sign language. I gave them an edited version of the truth. I told them that I had started studying years ago out of personal interest, that I had fallen in love with deaf culture, that I now dedicated my free time to volunteering. I didn't mention my abandoned granddaughter. I didn't mention the 4-year search. I didn't mention that the child they were raising was my blood. "That's admirable," Eliza said, with genuine admiration. "I wish there were more people like you." When they left, Lily gave me another of her spontaneous hugs. "See you Tuesday," she signed. "See you Tuesday," I repeated. And I watched them leave, this perfect little family, while I stayed behind with my huge, painful secret. Victor visited me regularly to see how I was handling the situation. We met in coffee shops. We talked for hours about my moral dilemma. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," I confessed one afternoon. "Every time I see her, I want to tell her the truth. I want her to know who I am." "And what would you gain from that?" Victor asked gently. "Peace for you or confusion for her?" "I don't know. Both, neither." He looked at me with deep understanding. "Georgia, let me tell you something about my story. When I was 15, my biological mother found me. She showed up at my school, told me who she was, and explained why she had given me up for adoption. And do you know what I felt?" "What?" "Rage. I felt rage because she had interrupted my happy life to satisfy her need for redemption, because she expected me to forgive her, to welcome her with open arms, to fill the void she felt. But I didn't have any void. I had parents who loved me. I was complete." His words hit me like a bucket of cold water. "Are you saying I should never tell her?" "I'm saying you should wait until she's old enough to process it, until she can understand the complexities, until it won't confuse or hurt her." I knew he was right, but the waiting was agonizing. Meanwhile, my relationship with Lily continued to grow. She started asking me to teach her specific things. She wanted to learn to cook, so I taught her how to make the oatmeal cookies I used to make for Scott when he was a boy. She wanted to learn about plants, so I brought seeds and we planted a small garden at the school. She wanted to know about my life, so I told her carefully edited stories about my deceased husband, about my job, about my house. "Do you have children?" she asked me one day with innocence. The question paralyzed me. Technically, yes, but Scott no longer felt like my son. "I had one," I answered honestly, "but we don't talk anymore." "Why?" "Because he made decisions I couldn't forgive." Lily tilted her head thoughtfully. "My mum says family always forgives." "Your mum is very wise," I told her. "But sometimes forgiveness takes a long time, and sometimes some wounds are too deep." 6 months passed since our first meeting. Lily turned 5. Joe and Eliza organized a party at the school and invited all the volunteers. I brought a gift I had made with my own hands. An illustrated book where each page had a different sign and a drawing that represented it. I had worked on it for weeks, drawing, coloring, writing in the most careful handwriting possible. When Lily opened it, her eyes lit up. "It's beautiful," she exclaimed in sign language. "You made it yourself?" "Yes, I thought you would like it." She hugged me so tightly that I thought my heart would explode. "You're my favorite person, Georgia." I looked at Joe and Eliza over her head. They were smiling, but I saw something in their eyes, a question, a slight worry, and I knew I was walking on a very thin line. That night, Victor called me. "Joe contacted me," he said without preamble. My blood ran cold. "What? Why?" "He wants to know more about you. He says Lily is very attached to you, that she talks about you constantly. He wants to make sure there's nothing strange about your interest in their daughter." "My God," I whispered. "Did you tell him anything?" "I told him you are exactly who you say you are, a committed volunteer who loves the deaf community. But Georgia, they're starting to suspect. You need to be more careful, or you need to tell them the truth." "I can't tell them the truth. They'll keep me away from her." "And if they discover you've been lying to them for months, they'll keep you away anyway, but with resentment." He was right. I was trapped in an impossible situation. If I confessed, I risked losing Lily. If I kept lying, I risked losing their trust when they inevitably discovered the truth. I spent that night without sleeping, considering all the options. And by the time morning came, I had made a decision. It was time to be honest. It was time to trust that the love Joe and Eliza had for Lily was great enough to understand my search. It was time to risk everything. I called Victor first thing in the morning. I need you to arrange a meeting with Joe and Eliza. I'm going to tell them the truth. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Are you sure? There's no going back after this. I'm sure. If I'm going to be part of Lily's life, it has to be from a place of honesty. I can't build a relationship based on lies. Victor arranged the meeting for the following Saturday afternoon in his office. He said it would be a neutral, professional space where we could all talk calmly. The days leading up to it were torturous. I rehearsed 1,000 times what I would say, how I would explain 4 years of obsessive searching, how I would make them understand that I wasn't a threat, but simply a desperate grandmother. Saturday arrived too quickly. I dressed carefully. I chose a brown sweater that made me look maternal, trustworthy. I arrived 30 minutes early at Victor's office. He was already there, making coffee, arranging the chairs in a circle. "Breathe," he told me when he saw my panicked face. "You're going to be fine. They are good people. What if they decide I'm dangerous? What if they think I want to take Lily away from them? Then we'll explain that's not the case. We'll show them your heart." Joe and Eliza arrived exactly on time. They came holding hands, with serious but not hostile expressions. Victor made the formal introductions, offered coffee, and created an atmosphere as relaxed as possible given the circumstances. "Thank you for coming," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "I know you have questions about me, about my interest in Lily, and you deserve honest answers." Joe leaned forward. "We appreciate you agreeing to meet with us. Georgia, Lily adores you, that's obvious. But as her parents, we need to understand why a woman who doesn't have deaf children, who doesn't have immediate family in the—" It was time. There was no way to sugarcoat it. "Because Lily is my biological granddaughter," I said with a clear voice. The silence that followed was absolute. I saw Eliza squeeze Joe's hand. I saw Joe's eyes widen with shock. I saw Victor hold his breath. "You're—" Eliza started to speak, but her voice cracked. Joe took control. "You are the mother of the biological parents who relinquished her. I am Scott's mother. Yes, Lily's biological father." The words poured out. I told them everything. The pregnancy, the deafness diagnosis, Carol and Scott's reaction, my desperation at the hospital. The door slammed in my face. The 4 years of relentless searching, the sign language learning, the sleepless nights, the money spent, the obsession that consumed my life. I told them about finding the school, about seeing her for the first time on the swing, about the birthmark that confirmed my suspicion. I told them about Victor and his help, and I told them about my decision not to violently disrupt her life, but to slowly earn a place. When I finished, tears were running down my cheeks. Eliza was crying too. Joe's jaw was tense, processing. "So you've been lying for 6 months," he finally said, "earning our trust under false pretenses." "They weren't entirely false," I replied. "Everything I told you about myself is true. I just omitted the most important part." "The part where you're her grandmother," Eliza said with a trembling voice. "The part where you have a blood tie to our daughter." "A bond her biological parents destroyed," I quickly added. I had no voice in the decision to give her up for adoption. I fought against it. I begged them to give her to me. But I had no legal rights, so the only option I had left was to find her on my own. Joe stood up and started walking around the office. This is too much. We need to process this." "I understand," I said. I understand that you're in shock, that you're angry, that you feel betrayed. But please, believe me when I say my only intention was always to make sure Lily was okay. When I first saw her, when I saw how happy she was, when I met you and saw the love you give her, I felt relieved, because I knew that despite all the pain, despite the abandonment, she had found exactly what she needed. But that didn't give you the right to deceive us, Eliza said, wiping away tears. You should have been honest from the start. I was afraid, I admitted. I was afraid that if I told you the truth, you would keep me away from her before I could even get to know her. And after 4 years of searching for her, the idea of losing her again was unbearable. There was a long silence. Finally, Victor spoke. "If you'll allow me," he said in a calm voice, "I would like to share something. When I met Georgia months ago, I saw something in her that I have rarely seen, an absolute dedication. This woman learned a completely new language at 61. She spent all her savings. She sacrificed her relationship with her son. She worked herself to exhaustion, all for a child she had never held, never seen grow up, never heard call her grandma. That kind of love is not common. That kind of love is not dangerous. It is extraordinary." Joe stopped next to the window, looking outside. "I need to ask you a question, Georgia, and I need you to be completely honest." "Anything," I replied. "What do you want from us? What do you expect to happen now that we know the truth?" The question hit me hard, because honestly, I didn't know for sure. "I don't want to take Lily away from you," I said slowly. "I don't want to interrupt her life or confuse her. You are her parents. You raised her. You loved her. You gave her everything Scott and Carol denied her. I just want permission to continue being a part of her life. Not as her grandmother, not necessarily, but as someone who cares about her, as someone who will always be there for her." "And when she grows up," Eliza asked, "when she's old enough to understand, will you tell her who you really are?" "Only if you allow me to," I replied, "and only if you believe it's what's best for her. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about what I need. It's about what Lily needs." Joe and Eliza looked at each other, having a silent conversation that only couples who know each other deeply can have. Then Joe sat back down. "We need time to process this," he said. "We need to talk to each other, maybe consult with a therapist. This is huge." "I completely understand," I said. "Take all the time you need." "In the meantime," Eliza added, "I think it's better if you don't come to the school, at least not until we've decided how to handle this." My stomach sank. "For how long?" "I don't know," she replied honestly. "It could be a week. It could be several months. We need to protect Lily first." "I understand," I said, although every word tore at me. "I'll do whatever you think is best." We said goodbye with an awkward tension. Victor walked them to the door while I remained seated, feeling my whole world collapse again. When Victor returned, he sat down next to me in silence. "Did I do the right thing?" I asked him. "You did the only thing you could do," he replied. "Now all that's left is to wait and trust." But the waiting was unbearable. 3 days passed without news, then a week, then 2. Every day that passed without hearing anything from Joe and Eliza was torture. I couldn't go to the school. I couldn't see Lily. I didn't know if she was confused by my absence, if she missed me, if they had told her anything. Victor tried to keep me calm, but even he was starting to worry. "Give them time," he would say. "This is complicated for them too." But I had waited 4 years, and now that I had finally found my granddaughter, now that I had built a relationship with her, the idea of losing her again was devastating. The third week without news was the darkest. I started to convince myself that Joe and Eliza had decided to completely cut me out of Lily's life, that maybe they were even considering moving to make sure I could never find her again. The anxiety consumed me. I could barely eat. I lost more weight. My co-workers noticed my deterioration and suggested I take a vacation, but I couldn't rest, not until I knew what would happen to my granddaughter. Victor came to my house every 2 days to check that I was okay. He brought me food, forced me to eat something, and listened when I needed to talk. I still think I did the right thing by telling them the truth, he told me one night as we drank tea in my living room. But I'm starting to fear that the truth scared them too much. I can't blame them, I replied. If I were in their place, I would be scared too. A stranger shows up, makes friends with my daughter, and then it turns out she has a blood bond that she hid for months. It sounds like the beginning of a nightmare. But you're not a threat. They don't know that for sure. They only have my word. Then, on day 23 of silence, I received a text message from an unknown number. Georgia, it's Joe. Can we meet tomorrow? Just the three of us, without Victor this time. My heart started beating so loudly that I thought it would burst out of my chest. I replied immediately. Yes, of course. Where and at what time? At our house. At 2:00 p.m. I'll send you the address. That night, I couldn't sleep. Why did they want to meet at their house? Was it a good sign or a bad one? Had they made a final decision? Was this going to be the last time I would have any connection with Lily? I arrived at their house exactly at 2:00. It was a cozy, one-story house, painted cream, with a front yard full of flowers and a swing hanging from a big tree. I could imagine Lily playing there, running, being happy. Joe opened the door before I could knock. Thanks for coming, he said, with a serious, but not hostile, expression. Eliza was sitting in the living room with a teapot and cups already prepared. They invited me to sit down. The atmosphere was tense, but not as cold as I had feared. First of all, Joe began, we want to apologize for the long silence. This has been complex to process. You don't need to apologize, I said quickly. You had every right to take your time. We spoke with a therapist specialized in adoption, Eliza continued. We told him the whole situation, and he helped us see things from different perspectives. One of the things he helped us understand, Joe said, is that your story and Lily's story are intertwined in a way that we can't simply erase. When we adopted Lily, Eliza added, we knew that one day we would have to tell her about her origins. We knew there would be questions about her biological family, but honestly, we never thought someone from that family would show up looking for her. The social worker told us something about the circumstances of the adoption, Joe continued. She told us that the biological parents had rejected her specifically because of her deafness. She told us that there was a grandmother who tried to stop the process, but she had no legal rights. My breath stopped. You knew about me? We knew you existed, Eliza confirmed. But we didn't have a name. We didn't have contact information. And honestly, we assumed that after 5 years, if you hadn't appeared, you had probably moved on with your life. I never moved on, I said with a broken voice. Not a single day. There was a long silence. Then Joe spoke again. There's something else you need to know, Georgia. Something that made us make our decision on how to handle this situation. What is it? I asked, feeling afraid. Victor didn't find you by chance at that festival, Eliza said softly. I was paralyzed. What do you mean? About 8 months ago, Joe explained, we started hearing rumors in the deaf community about an older woman who was obsessively looking for an adopted child. A woman who had learned sign language from scratch, who visited schools, who asked questions. We got worried, Eliza continued, because the details matched Lily's story. So we contacted Victor, who is a trusted interpreter we've known for years, and asked him to investigate discreetly. Victor confirmed that it was indeed you, Joe said, that you were the grandmother who had tried to stop the adoption, and he told us about your 4-year search. My mind was in complete shock. Victor. Victor knew who they were from the beginning. Yes, Eliza confirmed. We asked him to approach you, to observe you, to determine if you were safe to be around Lily. We needed to know, Joe explained, if you were like the biological parents who rejected her, or if you were truly different. If your search came from a place of genuine love or unhealthy obsession. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. All this time, you knew. And Victor reported everything back to us, Eliza said. He told us about your dedication, about your learning of sign language, about your respect when you finally saw Lily. He told us you never tried to kidnap her. You were never aggressive. You never did anything that endangered her well-being. That's why we allowed you to volunteer at the school, Joe continued. It wasn't a coincidence. We told the director to accept you. We wanted to see how you behaved near Lily, when you didn't know we were watching. And what we saw, Eliza said, with tears in her own eyes, was a woman who genuinely loves our daughter, who respects her, who never tried to confuse her or take her away from us, who simply wanted to be close to her. I put my hands to my face, crying uncontrollably. 4 years of searching, 6 months of careful lies, and it turned out they had known all along. I'm sorry, I said between sobs. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I hid who I was. We understand why you did it, Joe said gently. And honestly, your patience, your care, your willingness to wait for the right time told us more about your character than any immediate confession would have. Georgia, Eliza said, leaning forward. During these 3 weeks, we didn't just talk to a therapist. We also talked a lot to each other about what kind of family we want to be for Lily. And we decided that we want to be a family that honors all parts of her story, including you. What are you saying? I asked, almost not daring to hope. We're saying we want you to be a part of Lily's life, Joe said. Officially, honestly, as her grandmother. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Really? Really, sir, Eliza confirmed. But it has to be done the right way. It has to be on Lily's timeline, not ours or yours. It has to be with complete honesty from here on out. Whatever it takes, I said. I'll do whatever is necessary. First, Joe said, we're going to keep working with the therapist to decide when and how to tell Lily about you. She's 5 years old. We need to make sure she can understand it in a way that won't confuse or hurt her. Second, Eliza added, for now, you will continue to be Georgia, her volunteer friend. But gradually, over time, when the therapist gives us the green light, we will tell her the complete truth. And third, Joe concluded, you need to reconcile yourself with the fact that even after she knows you're her grandmother, we will remain her parents. You will be an important part of her life, but you will not replace the family she already has. I would never want to replace you, I said with absolute sincerity. You gave her what I couldn't. You gave her unconditional love, stability, a home. I just want to complement that, not compete with it. Eliza stood up and walked toward me. She held out her hand. Then welcome to the family, Georgia, officially this time. I took her hand, and she pulled me into a hug. I cried on her shoulder while she held me. Joe joined the embrace. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt something I had forgotten. True hope. When can I see her again? I asked when we finally separated. Tomorrow, Joe said with a smile. Come back to the school tomorrow. She's missed you terribly. She keeps asking where Georgia is. Did you tell her anything about my absence? We told her you were sick, Eliza replied, that you would be back soon, and now we'll keep that promise. That night, I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. My search hadn't ended, but it had reached a crucial milestone. I had found my granddaughter, and now, with her parents' blessing, I could be a part of her life. The next day, I arrived at the Hope School with a heart full of excitement and nervousness. I had brought a small gift for Lily, a wooden animal-shaped puzzle that I had seen in a store, and that immediately made me think of her. When I walked into the yard, Lily was playing with other children near the swings. The moment she saw me, her face lit up in a way that almost made me fall to my knees. She ran toward me at full speed and launched herself into my arms with such force that I almost lost my balance. "Georgia, I thought you weren't coming back," she signed quickly and desperately. "Where were you? Are you feeling better now? You were very sick." I knelt down to her height and gently stroked her hair. "I'm much better now," I signed back, "and I'm so sorry I worried you. I missed you every day." "I missed you too," she said, her little eyes full of tears. "It's not the same without you. No one tells stories like you." I handed her the gift, and her eyes widened with pure joy. We spent the next hour putting the puzzle together, while she told me everything that had happened during the 3 weeks of my absence. She told me about a tooth that had fallen out, about a new book her dad had bought her, about how Cloud, her dog, had learned a new trick. And I listened to every word, memorized every detail, grateful to be there. The following months were a slow and beautiful construction. Joe and Eliza invited me to their house for dinner one Friday night. It was strange and wonderful at the same time. Seeing Lily in her environment, in her home, surrounded by her things. Her room was painted mint green, full of toys, books, and drawings taped to the walls. There were photographs of her with Joe and Eliza at different stages of her life. Her first birthday, her first day of school, vacations at the beach, an entire life that I had missed. But instead of bitterness, I felt gratitude. Gratitude because she had been loved, documented, celebrated. During dinner, Lily insisted on sitting next to me. She served salad onto my plate, passed me the bread, and told me jokes in sign language that she had learned at school. Joe and Eliza watched us with warm smiles. After dinner, while Eliza and I washed the dishes, she spoke to me honestly. "I know this isn't easy for you," she signed to me as she dried a plate. "Seeing everything you missed." "It's bittersweet," I admitted, "but seeing her so happy makes the pain worth it." "You are stronger than you think, Georgia, and more generous. Not many people could do what you're doing." As the weeks passed, the visits became more frequent. I started going to their house twice a week, in addition to my volunteer work at the school. I taught Lily to cook recipes that my mother had taught me. We made the chocolate cake together that I used to make for Scott on his birthdays. We planted flowers in her garden. We read books. And slowly, without her knowing it, I started building memories that one day I could tell her were from a grandmother to her granddaughter. Joe and Eliza continued to work with the therapist, preparing for the moment when we would reveal the truth. The therapist recommended waiting until Lily was at least 6 years old, when she could understand more complex concepts like adoption, biological family, and chosen family. Meanwhile, I enjoyed every moment with her, aware that they were gifts I had almost lost forever. One day, while we were working in her garden, Lily asked me a question that took me completely by surprise. "Georgia, why don't you have family who comes to visit you?" My throat closed up. "What makes you think I don't have family?" "Because you're always alone." My mum says family is important. Why doesn't your family come to see you? I chose my words carefully. Sometimes families separate over difficult decisions. My son and I disagreed on something very important, so we decided to go our separate ways. What was so important? He made a decision about someone I loved, a decision that I thought was wrong, and I couldn't forgive him for that. Lily looked at me with her large, wise eyes for her age. My teacher says forgiving is important. Your teacher is right, but it's also okay to have boundaries. It's okay to say that some actions have consequences. Do you miss your son? The question hurt me in a way I hadn't expected. I miss the boy he was, the man I thought he would become, but the person he actually became. I don't miss that so much. That sounds sad, Lily said, hugging me spontaneously. I would never make decisions that would make you sad. I closed my eyes tightly to hold back the tears. You make me happy, Lily. Happier than I've been in a long time. 6 more months passed in this beautiful routine. Lily turned 6 years old. This time, Joe and Eliza included me in the planning of her party. I felt honored to be a part of something so special. The party was at their house, with friends from school and Joe and Eliza's extended family. I helped decorate, prepare food, and organize games. And when Lily blew out her candles, she looked for me in the crowd and signed, "I love you." I signed the same back, my heart about to explode. After the party, when everyone had gone, Joe, Eliza, and I sat in their living room while Lily slept in her room, exhausted from all the excitement. The therapist says she's ready, Eliza announced. He says that at 6 years old, with her level of maturity, she can start to understand her origin story. My pulse quickened. When? Next Saturday. We want to do it here, in her safe space, with the 3 of us present. How are you going to tell her? I asked, feeling panic. Calmly, with love, with age-appropriate honesty, Joe explained. We'll tell her that when she was born, her biological parents couldn't care for her, but that her biological grandmother, you, never stopped looking for her, and that now you are here. What if she gets angry at me? I asked with a trembling voice. What if she doesn't understand why I didn't look for her sooner? What if she thinks I abandoned her too? That's why we'll be there, Eliza said, taking my hand. To explain to her that you did everything you could, that you looked for her for years, that you learned her language just so you could communicate with her someday. Georgia, Joe said seriously, you need to understand that her reaction can be unpredictable. She might be happy. She might be confused. She might need time to process. Whatever her reaction is, we have to respect it and give her space. I understand, I said. I've waited 5 years for this moment. I can wait whatever is necessary for her to process it her own way. Saturday arrived too quickly and too slowly at the same time. I dressed carefully. I chose the same sweater I had worn the day I confessed the truth to Joe and Eliza. I arrived at their house at 10 a.m. Lily was happy to see me, without any idea of what was about to happen. Are we going to cook today? She asked me excitedly. Today we're going to talk, I signed to her. Your parents and I have something important to tell you. We sat in the living room, Lily between Joe and Eliza on the sofa, me in a chair across from them. My heart was beating so loudly that I thought everyone could hear it. Joe started. He explained adoption to Lily in clear, slow signs. He reminded her of previous conversations they had had about how she came into their family. He told her that her biological parents couldn't take care of her, but that didn't mean she wasn't loved. Lily listened attentively, nodding occasionally. She had heard parts of this story before, but then Eliza pointed to me and signed that Georgia had something very special to tell her. Lily looked at me with curiosity. I took a deep breath. Lily, do you remember when I told you I had a son who I don't talk to anymore? She nodded. That son, his name is Scott, and 6 years ago, he and his wife had a baby. That baby is you. You are my granddaughter, Lily. I watched her process the words, watched her eyes slowly widen with understanding. The silence that followed was eternal. I watched Lily look at Joe, then Eliza, then back at me. Her little hands moved nervously in her lap. Are you my real grandmother? She finally asked in slow signs. Yes, I replied, tears already streaming down my cheeks. I am your biological grandmother. Why didn't you take care of me when I was a baby? The question I had feared for years finally came. I wanted to, I explained with trembling signs. I begged them to let me take care of you, but your biological father and his wife had already made the decision to give you up for adoption. And I, as a grandmother, didn't have the legal rights to stop them. So I did the only thing I could do. I promised to find you, and I spent 4 years looking for you everywhere. 4 years? Her eyes were wide. 4 whole years. I learned sign language just so I could talk to you someday. I visited dozens of schools. I spent all my money. I didn't give up for a single day because I loved you even before I met you. Lily looked at Eliza. Is it true, Mum? Eliza nodded with tears in her own eyes. It's true, my love. Georgia looked for you with a love that few people know. And when she finally found you, she asked our permission to be a part of your life, because she loves you so much that she wanted to do the right thing, not the easy thing. Why didn't my other dad want me? Lily asked. And that question shattered me. It wasn't that he didn't want you, I said, choosing my words with extreme care. It was that he was afraid of not knowing how to care for a deaf child, afraid of doing things wrong, and that fear made him make a cowardly decision. But that has nothing to do with you, Lily. You are perfect. You always have been. So you've been visiting me all this time, knowing you were my grandmother. Yes, and I'm so sorry if you feel like I lied to you, but your parents and I wanted to wait until you were old enough to understand. Lily was silent for a long moment. Then she got off the sofa and walked toward me. She stood in front of me, looking directly into my eyes. Do you still want to be my grandmother? She asked me with a seriousness that broke and healed me at the same time. More than anything in the world, I replied. But only if you want me to be. I can call you Grandma Georgia. My heart exploded. That would be the greatest honor of my life. Then Lily launched herself into my arms and hugged me with all her might. I cried over her hair while she clung to me. Joe and Eliza were crying too, holding each other. This was the moment I had dreamed of for 5 years, and it was more beautiful than I ever imagined. The following months were an adjustment. Lily had many questions, and we answered them patiently. She wanted to know about my deceased husband, her grandfather she never met. She wanted to know about Scott. Why can't you forgive him if I can ever meet him? I don't know, my love, I answered honestly. Maybe someday. But for now, that wound is too fresh. And his other son? My half-brother? That question hurt me in a different way. He has a son, yes, your half-brother Robert, but that's another story for another day. Lily accepted my answers with impressive maturity, and slowly our relationship evolved. She was no longer just Georgia, the kind volunteer. Now she was Grandma Georgia, and that title meant everything to me. I started spending more time at their house. Joe and Eliza included me in decisions about her education, her health, and her activities. I felt part of a real family for the first time in years. Then, 8 months after the revelation, something I didn't expect happened. I was at Joe and Eliza's house one Sunday afternoon, helping Lily with a school project, when the doorbell rang. Joe went to open it, and I heard a voice I hadn't heard in more than 5 years. "Hi, I'm Scott. I think we need to talk." My blood ran cold. I stood up as Scott walked into the living room. He looked older, tired, with grey hair he hadn't had before. His eyes met mine, and I saw something in them that I had never seen: deep shame. "Mum," he said, his voice cracking. "Don't talk," I interrupted him. "What are you doing here? How did you find us?" Carol saw a social media post, a photograph of Lily at the Deaf Community Festival. Someone had tagged the school, and I needed to see her. I needed to see my daughter. "She is not your daughter," I said with a voice of steel. "You gave up that right 6 years ago." Joe stepped between us. "I think this conversation needs to happen. But not here. Not now. Lily is in her room." "I want to see her," Scott insisted. "I want to apologize." "You don't have the right," I replied. "Not after what you did." But then we heard footsteps. Lily appeared in the hallway, looking at all of us with confusion. Her eyes landed on Scott. "Who is that?" she asked me in sign language. Scott was looking at her with tears streaming down his cheeks, but he didn't know sign language. He couldn't communicate with her, and that realization hit him visibly. "He is Scott," I finally signed to her. "Your biological father." Lily observed him with clinical curiosity, without particular emotion. "The one who was afraid?" she asked. "Yes." "Why is he crying?" "I don't know, my love. You would have to ask him yourself." "I can't," Lily replied simply. "We don't speak the same language." And with that devastatingly simple sentence, she turned around and went back to her room. Scott collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing. "My God, what did I do? What did I do?" "You abandoned your daughter because she wasn't perfect," I told him mercilessly. "And now you live with those consequences." "I want to fix it," he moaned. "I want to learn sign language. I want to know her. Please, Mum." "That decision is not mine," I replied. "It belongs to Joe and Eliza. They are her parents." Joe spoke firmly. "I think you need to leave. This is too much for Lily right now. If you truly want to be part of her life someday, you'll have to earn it, like Georgia did." Scott left that day destroyed. And honestly, a part of me felt satisfied. Poetic justice. But another part, a small part that still remembered the boy I had raised, felt pity. In the following months, Scott tried to contact me several times. He sent me messages, called me, and begged me to give him a chance. I told him that if he really wanted to show he had changed, he should enroll in sign language classes. He should educate himself about deaf culture. He had to show real commitment, not just momentary guilt. To my surprise, he did it. 6 months after that first failed meeting, Scott had completed a basic sign language course. He showed me his certificate with a mixture of pride and humility. "It's not enough," I told him, "but it's a start." "Do you think she'll ever forgive me?" he asked me. "I don't know," I replied honestly. "But if she does, it will be because you earned that forgiveness, not because you have a right to it." Today, 2 years after finding Lily, my life is completely different. I'm 68 years old. I still work at the fabric store, but now it's because I want to, not because I need the money for investigators. I spend 3 afternoons a week with Lily. I take her to her therapies. We go to the park. We cook together. We do homework. She calls me Grandma Georgia and proudly introduces me to her friends. "This is my grandmother," she signs to them. "She looked for me for 4 years. She's the strongest person I know." Joe and Eliza have become my family, not just my granddaughter's parents, but my true friends. We celebrate birthdays together, spend holidays together, and support each other. Victor is still part of our lives too. He became Lily's honorary uncle, the friend who made this miracle possible. And Scott. Scott is learning. Slowly. He is allowed to visit her once a month, always supervised, always with Joe and Eliza present. Lily treats him with politeness, but without particular affection. He is the man who abandoned her. And although she understands that people can change, forgiveness is not automatic. Last night, while putting Lily to bed after reading her a story, she asked me a question. "Grandma Georgia, do you ever regret looking for me? Of all you sacrificed?" "Never," I replied in firm signs. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Finding you gave meaning to my life." "I love you, Grandma Georgia," she said, hugging me. "You are my hero. And you are my everything, my love, my reason for never giving up." I left her room that night with a full heart. I had lost 5 years of her life. I had sacrificed my relationship with my son. I had spent my money, my health, my time. But I had gained something priceless, the love of my granddaughter. And if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a single step. Because some battles are worth fighting, and some people are worth finding, no matter how long it takes, no matter how impossible it seems. True love never gives up, and I am living proof of that.